Welcome to this new Tech Captains podcast. So today we're excited to welcome David Spencer, Chief Technology Officer at Acceleration. David has a rich history in tech leadership. His expertise spans from his current role in London to roles at Runderman Thompson Data and Opinion Services. So from what I've seen from your LinkedIn in preparation, you're known more for transforming IT departments and leading new innovative tech strategies. So today we will hear about your insights, technology trends and solutions that made you a key figure at Acceleration, one of the WPP companies. So David, first, welcome, and second, please tell us more about Acceleration.
Thanks, Ron, and thank you for the warm welcome. So Acceleration, we've been around for many years, but it's been quite complicated within WPP in the way our business is set up. So as you mentioned, we were part of Wonderman Thompson Data, but essentially we took a chapter out of that book and put it into a new bundle within Group M, still in WPP, but now we sit under Group M Nexus. Essentially, we've taken all of our core competencies around ad tech as well as Google and created a capability for Group M to help our clients and help our agencies, our sister agencies within the group.
So it's more Acceleration, if I understand correctly. Its purpose is to help the various WPP companies to leverage the technology side.
Yeah, so we are positioned as a center of excellence, all things Google, and we help our clients unlock their investments in Google advertising technologies and beyond, social as well, and other platforms. But we focus primarily on Google. Along with that, we operate at the intersection of what we call advertising and cloud. So it's really how we can activate data, how we can apply AI, machine learning to create competitive differentiation for our clients.
Do you have any project that's kind of innovative on the technology side, or are you just stuck with filtering into Google BigQuery's tag manager requests?
So we have a holistic approach that we apply to clients. It's called our AI marketing maturity model, and that scores and ranks our clients. And we look at what are those foundational things that need to be in place to unlock AI with their data at scale within their environments. And our model looks at six different verticals: marketing analytics, digital analytics, bidding, audience, creative AI, and commerce. And I can just give you one example that we do around our custom algos. So uh, we what makes it quite unique is we don't really start with any personal data. We use aggregate data, sales data, and we would leverage that to build a model. So, for instance, you have historic sales data. We would leverage that, and based on the historics, we would predict the next sale. And we would build that into the model. Models would typically be built on Python. And then from there, we would add different levels of maturity to the model. So we'd overlay geo. So, if there's public available data in a geo level, we can overlay
I
that to
see.
enrich the model. And then as we mature clients around, if they're a retailer around commerce, we would look at product availability, product information, inventory information, product margin data, and that can be leveraged in the models that we then build. But that's just one example of how we drive maturity for clients. That's really custom and relevant for their businesses. What differentiates us is really the ability to deliver these capabilities within their environment, which is a bit different to the traditional agency model.
And If I look back into your career, so you started as a software developer, but you also had more managerial roles as a dev manager, senior systems analyst, which is more administrative work into designing what's going to be and analyzing what's happening, right? So like how these different roles like led you to become, you know, IT director, then head of tech, then CTO. Because usually what we hear more of CTO is someone who was a developer, became a lead dev, became an engineering manager, etc. And but your path is a bit different, right? Because you had some different types of roles.
Yeah, I mean, I started out in the mid 90s working for a new media agency. And back then we used to build websites. Uh, and we had to build websites for the lowest common denominator, which was Netscape back then. And IE on the Mac was really difficult to master as well. So we had that. Our biggest reference was we used the MSDN library that came in, I think, a collection of 5 or 6 CDs that you would get like a quarterly update from Microsoft, which was a great Bible. It had everything around the DOM, so HTML4
Yeah.
specification. We could reference that, and I think that for me was a good start. I think from there I moved off after the big com crash in the early 2000s. Before that, I joined Accenture, and with that, I joined the business as part of Microsoft's competency center, and we delivered all things Microsoft, from delivering bespoke services, enhancing Complus based solutions, three-tier design architectures, etc. And we're really at the forefront of the first to leverage C sharp and those sort of technologies on the Microsoft side. It was really interesting. We had some really great projects that we worked on. Grateful in building my experience. So my experience there varied, and it was varied by vertical. For instance, we delivered one of Africa's first mobile water reading solutions back in 2003. And that was built on a device called the iMate. We used something called merge replication, and we would reconcile the billing back to an Oracle backend system for the clients. That was just one example. Other examples would be, for instance, we built reporting architectures for the elections. And, it's a deadline you can't miss. And your code had to be audited. So you had to make sure that things were spot on. And essentially back then in the early 2000s, with those solutions, we didn't really have the power of the cloud that we have now. And we had to really build things for scale. And it was really about, creating a permutation-based report generation capability, reporting architecture that can deliver that at scale.
But like with everything you're saying, it's like a pattern. Obviously, we see a lot with CTOs and like senior roles that have been in the industry for many years. Is that you started with technologies that are very, very different to what we use today. And if you say these technologies to most developers today, they will be like, "What's that?" At least the ones who started working in the past 10 years. So how do you keep up with these technologies and with what's happening now? And you lead teams that don't use any of the things that you got your experience from.
No, no, absolutely. And I think my career kind of took a change when I went more towards the open source world. So, away from the Microsoft tech and having that exposure around open source. And with that, I think, that was as far back as 2011, where we built solutions that would leverage MuleSoft, JSF, Java, Git, and Jenkins, and most of those technologies are still around today. But what we're using today in our day-to-day environment is a bit different, right? So we leverage Python a lot more. for our machine learning data science capabilities. We also leverage a lot of the Google tech stack, and with that, it's really focused on Google Cloud and how we can best integrate solutions for clients, automate data feeds. If it's putting data on buckets and automating batch-based processes, or having more real-time pubs up type of architecture. So I think the patterns remain similar. I'm really grateful for the exposure to open source, and I think if you came from a Microsoft background, you you don't really look beyond Microsoft, because it's really easy for you to find results within the Microsoft ecosystem. You're not aware of all the great things that are out there. And I think, if there's a key takeaway for me, it's really about, exploring more beyond your comfort zone.
Yeah, it's interesting too because I had a horrible flashback then to those massive MSDN sets of CDs and I think later DVDs, right? Microsoft Developer Network stuff. It was just crazy, and people who, like I say, younger listeners would just think that's just mad. And even OS updates coming in massive boxes of disks, right? And you're sitting there waiting for all this stuff to update. But I think it's interesting too. It sounds like your career probably took a somewhat similar path to mine, because I started out in the Microsoft world at one point in the 90s. And then when I had my own company, it just became so much easier to go down the open source route when you're trying to sell solutions. Microsoft want you to buy all these licenses, spend all this money. Instead, we could offer things built on open source products, and it made such a big cost difference to customers.
It did, and I think the key difference there was investing in people versus investing in licenses.
Yeah.
And just grateful to have been in the position to drive that going forward. I think in 2009 we set up a partnership with a integration as a services platform company called Boomi. We were also looking at a company called Cast Iron. Both of those companies were then acquired by IBM and Dell, respectively. But essentially, it was leveraging open source technology, but as an integration solution. So you didn't have to worry about the scaling, the multi-tenancy, all of the infrastructural challenges, and being open source really helped with pushing those unique solutions that we offered forward.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we kind of come full circle. Because I'm actually just looking at my toolbar here, and I have an Ubuntu icon because I have the Windows, subsystem, the Unix subsystem, and it's just, if you'd said to anyone 10 years ago there was going to be an icon to be sat in your taskbar for Windows, they would never have believed you that was going to happen, right? So I think, what's his name, the Sadea, the new CEO of Microsoft, has really, I think, changed a lot about how they operate, and understood that was probably a really good path for them to go down.
Yeah, I mean, the change they had, embracing open source, was a key turning point for me.
I want to go, David, more into the tech stack that uses acceleration, but just before that, I want to jump on something you mentioned a few minutes ago, that obviously you are heavily into the Google tech stack, tech environment, right? It makes sense in advertising just for Google Ads. That's enough of an argument. But in terms of Google Cloud, I want to hear a bit like your experience, because I hear like mixed messages. Like if you look at tech Twitter, for example, you can see that a lot of people get disappointed by the speed at which Google is killing products, even in Google Cloud, or changing quotas of CPU usage or whatever it is, and they get surprised, right? So, like, what is your experience with Google Cloud?
So with Google Cloud, obviously there's complexity around costing and pricing and making sure you remain in budget. But you need to have good governance set up for that. Otherwise, costs can run, which will impact. But I think looking at things, Google has recently improved on that. They'll continuously improve. If you look at our core offering and what we do, and we see this in the products such as GA4 as well. So if we look at GA4, GA4 came about a couple of years ago. It's based on Firebase, so it's really event-driven, but it did not have parity with Universal Analytics, which is replaced. And Google kept driving a new data model, event-driven, which is on par with solutions like Adobe Analytics. But it's getting there. It's getting closer to Adobe Analytics. But it is changing. All of these products are changing, and it's all about how you adapt to change and design for change.
I see. And can you tell us more then about what programming languages, frameworks, open source libraries like you guys use a lot?
Yeah, so we do use Python. We use various open source libraries like some like D3 for visualization, MATLAB, things like that. More recently, we've got quite a big focus on shifting what we're doing into Vertex AI on Google Cloud, and it's really for us to have a proper ML ops process to go and deploy our models.
Have you tried to using any of the ARM instances on Google Cloud? So I did use Google Cloud at a previous company, now back on AWS again, and we've been shifting where I am at the moment. We're shifting some of our resources onto Graviton, and we've seen some, probably about 15% cost reduction, performance improvement, which I think is Graviton 3. But I was reading now that Google have something similar, although they've sourced the chips from somebody else, right? Because they do us for making their own. So I was just wondering, have you explored using ARM on GCP for any of your customers?
We haven't leveraged ARM specifically. If you look at the things that we do for our clients, we typically host our solutions. We would leverage Cloud Run in most cases to do auto scaling around the solutions that we deploy. For instance, there's a great solution around GTM server side that allows you to host your own data collection on Google Cloud as well as others. So Google pioneered that capability, but you can leverage Cloud Run to manage your auto scaling. So we don't normally go down to the tweaking of those instances. In some cases we do, but we partner with our clients to deliver solutions on premise in their infrastructure. So not really explored the ARM setup yet.
Okay. And actually, you just said GTM then. You mean Google Tag Manager?
Yeah, Google Tag Manager.
All right, so you can set that up to collect the data. So Google doesn't get the data; it comes into enterprise servers or servers that you control. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, exactly. And it's what's really great about that. It has capabilities for you to redact any PII data before forwarding anything to Google. And I think through the pressure that Google's faced over before the new transatlantic agreement was in place, there was a lot of privacy scrutiny. And I think Google has really pushed the boundaries with that. So looking at GTM server side, you are in full control. You can host it in Azure, you can host it in AWS, but more importantly, it future-proofs your data collection capabilities. So it allows you to have a proper first-party cookie that's not subject to things that will come downstream. So currently, a lot of people are using CNAMEs to obfuscate the cookie's domain name as a quick fix. However, the newer updates to browsers, to WebKit, will start to block those as well over time. And it's just a matter of time before those changes happen. So I think Google's in a good position when it comes to data collection and giving you control. Having wide exposure to a lot of data collection technologies, it's one of the only vendors that are out there that gives you that flexibility right now. Any other vendor doesn't allow you to really, host your own data collection on their tech stack.
So that actually then brings me to an obvious question then. I think in January, Chrome will be killing third-party cookies, right? So just wondering what are your thoughts are, what's happening in your world? I mean, it's a huge change, right?
It's a massive change, and I think not all cookies will be stopped. I think it will be turned down, and it will be turned down over the course of 2024. So I believe that there's various APIs that are out there. Google's privacy sandbox, as well as attribution APIs, topic APIs, etc., that will be leveraged. So Group M are working with some of our largest clients right now to trial that out, and so our clients are well protected with this change going forward. But obviously, it's been the backbone of media attribution for a lot of companies, and Google's well positioned with that. So right now, if you look at Adobe Analytics can't give you model data for media conversion, and Google's really well positioned to do that. So Google leverages its signals. So when you sign into Google, it creates a device graph. But what it does in a privacy and compliant way, it would collect data per region now with consent mode version 2, and it would then aggregate those addresses so it can give you model conversion data back in the reporting, because there's a big risk, right? There's a big risk around you as a brand trying to advertise and not actually understanding the value of your investments and how that is driving conversion. So it's really addressing those needs, and there's consent mode that's important. And what I would recommend is GTM server-side, because GTM server-side would protect you from the third-party cookie death and deprecation, because you can fully own your own cookies. It's your platform, it's your collection. Yes, it can send data to Google, you don't have to, but it has all of those benefits for data collection. And I think where Google's quite different would be you are able to build audiences in GA4 that you can use against the Google advertising stack. So you can then reach audiences that you want to advertise certain things to. And it gives you that capability. So if you look at Adobe Analytics, yes, you can report on product performance, but there's no native integration into the Google tech stack that can give you that audience reach. And it's all about the size of the audience versus the amount of money that you're paying for it in your advertising. So Google really helps brands, advertisers with that in their stack. But I think there's a bigger problem. You want to measure across all of your channels, not just Google. So and with that, it's really about how you leverage things such as marketing mix models, regression-based attribution, which is cookieless attribution capabilities that's not dependent on third-party cookies.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not surprising, is it? If you compare Facebook to Microsoft to Google, it's still, I don't know, 80-90% of their revenue is advertising. Microsoft obviously have all their software business and all of that. Facebook have a closed ecosystem they can push into, but Google's kind of unique, really, is it's still everything else. And obviously everyone's pushing for a slice of it. So I think they're really being forced to kind of innovate and come up with some really interesting solutions to obviously keep the money flowing in.
It's been a problem since the early days where Google's always looked to diversifying their revenue, and it's, I think, where I've seen significant changes really around how Google processes data, how it protects consumer data, because that was one of the big areas of scrutiny for them. And I think, like no other business that are out there, they've been scrutinized the most, and they've been obviously up for heavy fines that that and risk. And I think they've alleviated that through the way they've architected their solutions going forward. So it's really making sure those things work well.
That's interesting. And I wanted to switch outside of Google and biscuits. uh, and we have a small tradition in the podcast where the guest presents a book they really enjoyed, and the one you sent ahead of this podcast is called "A More Beautiful Question" by Warren Berger, and the line is all about the power of questioning, and those game-changing questions that drove innovative businesses such as Google, Nike, and Netflix. So that's for the opening, but can you tell us more why this book?
Yeah, so the book really resonated with me because it's about the power of questioning, and it's a lost art unless you are Montessori schooled. I think widely in society. So it's really about asking the right questions, the most relevant questions to gain new insight, and then with that grow your knowledge, grow your learning. I think if you are able to ask the right set of questions, you are able to succeed uh, and drive things. It's really important. I believe, even with my kids, I would always ask them, you know, what good questions have you asked
Yeah.
today? And it's really, I think when you're younger, it's, you're not aware of society more. You ask questions freely, and as you grow with age, your questioning gets kind of dampened, and it's typically with who you're in the room with, what's happening, so you can't freely question things. So it's really around bringing that back and driving questioning for change. What the book is really good at is going through those limitations, and then going through how those startups started with the questions they asked to drive innovation.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, that book. I was actually looking through some of the comments that people had written. Some guy had put a huge, he'd written almost a book of comments. But one of the things he said in there, which I thought was interesting, he said, although questioning has been a part of our everyday lives from childhood to adulthood, we might wish to pick up the pace or enhance this skill, as most of our education systems have generally taught us to memorize facts. And I'd never really thought about that before, but that's very true, isn't it? That you get, as you're going through school, you're reading all of these books. It's like, the reason that the planets go around the sun, or the reason that these are the things that you learn, right? But you don't often, because I suppose there's a time component. You don't have the time to kind of go and dig around and ask all of these questions. Maybe that's why we focus on memorizing facts. But then it got me wondering, with the AI stuff recently, all this concern about essays being written by AI. I'm wondering if this is all going to change again, and I was curious what your thoughts were around this.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite an interesting place where we are right now with LLMs, generative AI. I believe that there's a commercial model missing around people contributing their knowledge to models to grow that, to sustain that going forward. Those models will only become smarter, and leveraging those models. Questioning is really important. Context questioning, things like that, but also protecting your knowledge. So we within WPP have our own private graph that we would use. So obviously, if you leverage things like ChatGPT, you contribute to a public model. So it's really about how you leverage that in your day to day. I think there's big challenges around who owns your IP in those models, who owns your thinking. If you've trained that model, is it the business you're working for? And then just looking at it, when those models become good. I think the the current cadence, they say within the next 3 years, the public domain LLMs would be beyond, human intellect.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah.
scary.
But I suppose where my question on this really, I was linking it back though to this
Yeah.
book, because I was thinking, okay, if we're saying that we don't ask questions because we memorize facts,
Yeah.
but now there's all of this concern around essays being generated and written by AI and how that's going to change education. Does that then have an impact on this? Does this whole way that we teach around just rote memorization have to fundamentally change as well? I don't know. That was kind of what I was wondering.
Oh
really.
yeah, no, absolutely, and it's it is spot on. It's all about being able to ask the right questions and being good at that versus your domain knowledge that you have. I think
Yeah,
there's a balance between both. I think if you are a graduate right now, what would be the things that would be important to you, right? For me, it would be exposure, and then you need to leverage generative AI. You need to do that, but you need to do that in a way that's competitive, because your peers are using it as well. So if you're not using it, I believe this book is really good, and it teaches you the foundations to go deeper with your questioning, and that would unlock a lot of value through the questioning that you can do into generative AI.
yeah. I mean, so just final point on this. One of the things I always tell people when I have new team members or whatever, I say question everything. Don't accept that the way something is done now is the way that it should be done in the future. And I credit my father that. My father was an aircraft engineer, so he was always wanting to understand how things worked. He was always taking things apart. And so I've always had that mentality that don't accept that because it's this way, it always needs to be this way, right? I think progress is only made through questioning, really.
That is true, and I think there's many things that are typically a burden or redundant that people are just doing without questioning. It's really good to rethink what you do, and it's really powerful, to drive things going forward. And I think it's in the DNA of innovation.
Yeah, no more on these very wise words. David, I will thank you for coming speak with us today. And to everybody listening, we will be back in 2 weeks. Thank you. Bye bye.